Been a long fan of your YouTube channel. You know, as a bystander, you have people watching, but you don't know who's watching. So I'm one of those people that has been watching for quite a while.
Yeah.
And I got to give it to you. The one thing that's very different about how you do business and how you come on with these YouTube videos is that, in my experience as somebody that's bought investment properties, I've been a landlord, I've done all this stuff.
Hmm.
There's no gatekeeping with you. So, and that is very rare. So you're very transparent with everything you do from beginning to end. And the fact that you guys do all these case studies where you actually walk the properties, it really is incredible because a lot of people don't share much. And I don't know if it's because they just don't think there's value in it or they just don't know. But you guys are fantastic. So what I want to start with just sweet additions. Can we just
Appreciate
kind
that.
of,
Thank you.
yeah, anytime, man, you deserve it, truly. Um, Wondering about your business, kind of like how it came about with YouTube and everything. I just want to know how the whole thing came together and how is it that now you're on YouTube, how that's working out for you, just as a backgrounder for my viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So my core business is doing design and permit work for clients who are mostly investors, small developers, and homeowners. I would say that probably investors are the majority. And in terms of how I got into doing YouTube, I just figured it's probably the best way to do marketing and sales and marketing. It's as a matter of fact, what you described right there with regards to putting together case studies and sharing information. I mean, these days people can get any, information anywhere they want, especially with AI. The information's there. All I'm doing is really I'm just curating it and trying to customize the information that's going to be relevant for my audience. And I find that with YouTube and putting my face out there, it builds a certain level of trust with people so that when they are ready to move forward with doing the work, whether it's, a garden suite or whether they want to do a multiplex conversion or something like that, they're pretty much ready to go as long as they have the product available. So there's not much of a sales process. It's more about, when are you available to start? I have some questions about the process. But there's less of a vetting process because they feel that because we've done this, with the experience that we have and the information we've shared, and obviously with the videos working with the clients, they can see that we've actually done the work, so they have that level of trust. And so, selfishly, I find that just providing information helps my business from the sales and marketing perspective.
Yeah, right on. And it truly does. So I guess what I'm wondering from your where you sit for so let's say for me as a real estate broker and just kind of going over the let's say the last 5 years, the market has been extremely volatile in many different ways, right?
Yes.
I'm just wondering from where you sit, assuming you work with a lot of investors or people that just families looking to just get an income suite, get some help with their mortgages and stuff. How have you seen your business change over the last 5 years? And that's going to be a loaded question because there's so many variables, but
Mhm.
directionally your business and your industry, where is it going? Is it picking up? Is it slowing down like real estate is slowing down right now? Like, where do you sit in this whole thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say overall, if you look at the big picture, obviously the last couple of years with interest rates going up, and then also the challenges with the glut in inventory, as we know in the condo market, things have kind of slowed down overall for not just my core business when it started for basement suites, because as I mentioned, a lot of my clients were investors who were mom and pop buying a single family home, converting to a duplex. So overall, things have slowed down, but for us, we actually have not slowed down because we increased our service offerings, and it's not that I purposely wanted to increase it so that I can be more insulated from market fluctuations. It was just that it seemed like a natural progression of where things were headed from a policy perspective, right? So 10 years ago, when I started the business, I had a really good understanding from my previous role as a home inspector and also working on my own projects of basement second suites. And that's where I started. I mean, that's still a big part of our business, but I would say, especially the last 5 years, it's really evolved to the some of the other products that came in line with the policy shifts, right? So garden suites, laneway suites, and then with the multiplex conversions. So a lot of the missing middle housing stuff, we are really seeing the marketplace uh, embrace that type of housing, because of where real estate prices are, and then because also the various municipalities recognize that as being an important part of housing options for to help mitigate some of the housing crisis issues.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Well, the one the one video you did recently really hit home for me, man. So you guys did a bungalow in Scarborough. I grew up in the East End. I'm
Mhm.
familiar with all these bungalows. I go through hundreds of properties every single year,
Mhm.
and just so many things hit. Like, for example, for those people that don't know, like East York, Scarborough, tons of bungalows from war homes to the 60s to the 70s, double brick, no insulation. You have 700 square foot bungalows to 1200 square foot bungalows. The layouts are relatively similar, 2 to 3 bedrooms, the
Mhm.
door at the side. I've always thought they've lent themselves to perfect, as I've called them in the past, gray market duplexes. Because most people retrofit they rent out the basement and off you go to the races with your basement apartment. Most of them are not legal.
Mhm.
Now, you guys did this project. I'm just going to pull it up. I'm going to share my screen. Let me, it's an
Yep.
Excel spreadsheet. So look, I do everything in Excel, including like my YouTube videos. So I'll
Yeah.
edit all this stuff out. Okay. So this is a bungalow in Scarborough that I think you were engaged with this. You were hired as, I guess, to help with the retrofit of this, correct?
This project was from a student of mine,
Okay. Oh,
and I
okay.
was
From
not
your
involved.
education courses.
Yeah, so he attended my training program so it's called the Max Suite training program, and it really focuses on the highest and best use of the existing property. So, duplex, triplex, garden suite, etc. Not sort of some of the bigger things where you're severing lots or assembling lots and things like that. So I wasn't involved in the design of this one. Um, but he basically took my training and he kind of understood what was required. And I just highlighted it because he had the training from our program. But I'm not, I had to look through everything, but I didn't actually do the design work on this one.
Okay, but I would assume you're fairly familiar, you're relatively familiar with this thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason this one really caught my eye is because having gone through so many of these homes and different variations of the way people have done this, I
Hmm.
have never seen a bungalow taken and made into 3 units. I've never seen somebody do the basement as 2 bachelor units. So that was what was interesting to me. So I guess from where you stand, is this something that's common, or is this like one of the first offs you've seen where somebody did it like this?
Um, no, I mean, we haven't done a whole lot of them, but we are starting to do these types of conversions where we're turning the basements into two separate units. Now, people have done that forever. Like a lot of people, have called me before and say, I want to do two suites in the basement. And I would always tell them you can't do that because the bylaws don't allow 3 units, right? Even though the numbers made sense. Now, this one actually had 2 bedrooms in the basement. Like each one is not a studio. It's actually each one is a 1 bedroom, right?
Okay, yeah, that's right. So I have the
Yeah.
floor plan right
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. So they work very well. They work very well for larger bungalows. Like if you have 1,000 square feet or higher, then you can potentially for sure, you can do studios. You can potentially do 1 bedrooms, right? And so what my argument in the video and some, social media posts is that if you have a decent layout, like, you don't want to force it, but if you have a decent layout and you're able to get more rent because it's two separate units, and the rent can be a lot higher in terms of percentage compared with the additional costs. Most of the cost that's going to come for doing 2 units as opposed to 1 unit is going to be the extra cost for a bathroom and a kitchen, right? Your
Yeah.
fire separation is going to be roughly the same, upstairs and downstairs. You still have one mechanical room. You're going to have 2 separate entrances. That's the one thing that's going to potentially cost you more, right? But then you have to look at, well, I was able to rent this thing for, if it's a single unit, I might be able to rent it for $2,500. But now because it's two separate units, each unit I can probably rent for 2,000 because it's smaller. And now I'm going to get $4,000. So that's an extra, whatever, 60%. But the cost to actually do the rental might not be 60%. It's probably going to be, whatever, 25, 30%. And then that 60% goes on forever, right? Because like you're going to keep renting it out and the cost to do the rental is a one-time thing.
So for this particular project here, my question, so you said two separate entrances. So these homes typically, from my experience, they'll have a front entrance, usually into the first floor, and then they'll have the
Yep.
side entrance that splits. One
Yeah.
goes upstairs, one goes downstairs.
Yeah.
So is that sufficient for this type of layout, or was there another retrofit that had to be done in terms of
Yeah,
egress?
there was another entrance basically.
Oh, okay.
And
So
so
like three in total.
yeah, so what's interesting or what's unique about 3 units is that the building code, as soon as you change a building to 3 units, it gets recategorized as a small building. So it's no longer a house, right? So if it's a single family or if there's a basement apartment, it's considered a single family with a secondary suite. That's actually new in the building code. And if it's 3 units and higher, it's considered a small building. So under a small building, the code requirements are that each unit has to have a dedicated egress, dedicated entry, or you are required to have a second means of egress, which does not include a window. And
Hmm.
so if you look at apartments, right? Like let's think of traditional small apartments, 10-unit apartment, right? Usually there's two sets of staircases because they're shared. Both sets of staircases are shared. If you're doing a shared entry, then you need to have another one. And if you have 3, 4 units, it doesn't make sense, right? So that's why we just create one single entrance for each unit. And we've even done this for 4 units. That was one of the other videos with you may have seen it with Sergey.
Yeah.
So he's got the four. So basically like this, but he has four. So he split the upstairs and the downstairs, and he's building the garden suite right now.
Well, I think the greatness with that is that again, the quality of life for the tenant is going to be that much better if everybody has their own private entrance, less interaction between tenants, and everybody has their space. And I think it actually just ends up working better, and it's probably easier to rent as well in the future. This I found pretty interesting, the way this was set up with the window, and I guess this is obviously a requirement. They did everything by the book here, so this was very interesting. I like this overall.
Yeah.
Um, so let me ask you now. I don't know if you'll have, I don't expect to have the numbers or anything, but directionally, I'm just trying to figure out what something like this would cost. Now, just looking at like throughout that whole video, I noticed this thing was basically what I would call future-proofed, right? They ran everything was done right. Everything was done, I'm assuming, to code, and they future-proofed it. They upgraded the panel to 200 amp, and I guess they wanted to also do a garden suite in the future potentially. So everything is kind of set up for that, and then potentially for separate metering and stuff.
Yep.
How does somebody go about thinking costs? Like, I know that you can't say how much does something like this cost because the answer is it depends. But can you provide some sort of a framework or a range to kind of like, okay, if I wanted to do this right, if I wanted to future proof it, I wanted to start out with a bungalow, do something like this, 3 units in in the existing structure, and then potentially a laneway suite. Like, what kind of costs are we talking about here? In like all in, like soft costs, hard costs, and all that. The biggest challenges I run into, oh, my buddy finished his basement for 55 grand. And it's like, okay, like, you know what I mean? It's like, well, to do a legal conforming basement, you're probably over 100 grand. But like, and everybody, what are you including in the money in the cost that you just gave me versus what it really costs? People are bad at math too. They magically forget different costs and soft costs and stuff. So I guess framework or cost per square foot to retrofit wouldn't make sense
Yeah.
in something like this because it's just again every place is nuanced and different. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah. Like people always love the per square footage cost. And I did that one video of the garden suite that I built in Brantford, and I GC'd that one by myself. I did have a carpenter that was local and handy and was able to kind of do a lot of things for me. And it was $275,000, and it's getting me, $2,200 in rent. It was a decent size 650 square foot unit. And, as soon as I converted to a per square footage cost, people just kind of lost their minds, right? Because it came up to like $475 a square foot. But like I said, you can't really compare it to that because it depends on the market. It depends on what you're adding. A garden suite, for the most part, because it's smaller, you're going to get higher per square footage costs because of, all the fixed items that you need to add on, right? And so I think, to address that question, or not the question, but the comment that you had about that guy that, got a quote for $55,000. I find that, a lot of the people that I work with, I always filter out people, what their expectations are. And I personally don't work with people who have unrealistic expectations. There's enough people who understand the real cost of construction that we work with. And these days there's so many different products right now for financing. We know about the MLI Select program for 5 units and plus, but now we have new programs where the bank will lend you the full amount for the renovation and construction for under 4 units. And yeah, sure, it's going to cost $300,000, but you're going to do it properly. You're going to do it with permits, and the value is going to remain there, right? So why work with somebody who is going to be trying to get this thing at bare minimum cost because they and their dad are going to be working on this thing on the weekends, right? That's probably not your target audience.
Well, that's the issue I have with a lot of people, especially online, right? Like it's like, oh, let's use as an example. I built a garden suite 300K or 275, and people like not all, but the loud voices online freak out. Oh my God, that's so expensive, this and that. But again, these are people that don't understand how any of these things work because I have yet to walk into a place where if you're hands off, you can get it for less than, let's say, $300 per square foot. Like, let's say builder cost to build a house used to be 250 pre-COVID. Since COVID, it's gone up to 350 for builder grade product, and then it's come down a little bit, and then it's fluctuating. It really depends, right? So it really is not fair comparing costs when you have people making claims that they can build for less when they're not taking into account their own time, their own money, and what they're doing. So I can totally understand. And by the way, a garden suite for 275 is not bad. I've talked to a bunch of people, and it's like, I mean, if you want to build in Toronto, you're going to be paying well over $400 per square foot, well over $500 per square foot for a lot of these places, right? Depending on where you are. And again, it comes back to what you said. You're building something much smaller. 600, 700 square feet is not the same as building a 3,000 square foot home. It's just completely different. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Um, Okay, let me introduce you. So I love doing case studies and I love kind of just because I want to get people thinking of how to think about properties that make sense. And for those that are actually serious about doing something like this, like I am very serious about doing this. I'm going to show you a property that I recently lost out on. I mean, it still potentially could happen, but I dragged my feet and now I'm kicking myself because I think this was the unicorn for me personally. So this is in York region. Obviously, a nice sized lot. So this is the original home.
Hmm.
Then they did an addition in the back. So it's basically like two semi-detached homes, but flipped sideways. And then there's this garage. The
Hmm.
lot is nice. And they had also pulled a severance. So this lot could be severed and you could build two homes on it.
Hmm.
Why I was interested in this. This was just over $1 million. So you have this house right here, the main house, and then you have the entry into this new addition that's call it 20 or 30 years old with a basement and everything.
So is this in
Separate,
Toronto?
York region.
Okay.
York region. So and then there's this garage.
Yeah.
So just doing very basic math. Let's say you were to pick this up just over $1 million. This thing was, and then with some renovations inside both of these, there would be, let's call it non-conforming, right? Because it's a single residential dwelling, but they're separated, and this addition was always done separately. You're bringing in well over $5,000 in rent here on this place. You know, between like call it 5,500 to 6,000, depending on the finishes and what you do inside. For just over $1 million, this made sense all day long. And that doesn't take into account this and the future things that you can do with it. But again, it's not Toronto, so it is York region. If you were to kind of rate this, let's say I came to you and I'm like, Andy, I'm thinking about, going forward with this. This is my plan. Maybe walk me through like the consultation or kind of how we would go about this. Like, what are your first thoughts when you see a property like this?
My first thoughts are always kind of what's the goal of the owner, right? So I think that in this case here, probably an investor type that wants to maximize highest and best use of the property, right? So the
Yeah.
first thing is I can't, it's hard for me to just look at the property and say what I want to do. I really need to know what the goals of that particular investor or homeowner is, right? Like, do they want to hold this thing for a long time? Do they want to sell this in 5 years type of thing?
So
So,
for me, as an example, I can just tell you, for me, this was a land bank. It was a great lot, great street, great area. I
okay.
thought to myself, okay, if you spend 100 grand sprucing up the inside, you know, I'm happy to just sit on it for 10 years and just forget it and just rent it out and forget it. And then in 10 years, maybe you sever the lot, build two homes, or just keep renting it. right? It's
Yeah.
but it was long term. Like there's like nothing short term here.
Right. Long term. Okay. So, yeah, so that's important. So what I would say is that that would be a typical kind of like, buy and hold and maximize highest and best use. And also, if you're not into any sort of big development right now, like severing and building new because of cost or whatnot, I would say something like this because it already has the addition, perhaps, doing cosmetic upgrades or doing conversions like I don't know which particular area of York region, but a lot of places now permit up to 4 units, right? Minimum 3 units in every city, but in many cities they will allow 4 units. And so I would say, hey, why don't you legally convert it into 4 units and see what run your numbers and see what rent you can get and see what the cost would be and I would basically call it a day. That garage you can probably rent it out as storage or have one of the tenants utilize that garage and charge them more rent. To me, that kind of makes sense. And yeah, if you can sever that lot and build two multiplexes, that makes because it's a very wide 60 feet, right?
Yeah, 62.
So yeah, so you have a very wide lot. As long as that area is something where the city is okay with doing severances because sometimes you have to be careful because if you go into some of these very low density neighborhoods that were kind of post-war, all of the lots are very similar in terms of uniformity, and they don't really like when you go into those post-war neighborhoods and start slicing up the lots. It's different if, let's say, this was kind of most closer to the core of the city, where when you look at the zoning map and there's more variety in terms of the lots, some are wide, some are skinny, some are like big squares. You have more flexibility to play with in terms of severances. But those typical 1970s neighborhoods where all the lots are very similar and then the streets are curved and things like that it's harder to do severances on those ones. There's more pushback from the cities. Those are the ones where you just kind of maximize the existing lot without severing. Um,
Got it.
like a 3 unit, 4 unit conversion, garden suite, you can do that all day long. But severing, I know we're kind of off topic here, but since you talked about it, severing is more kind of, you kind of want to stay somewhat closer to the core of the city, like wherever the original downtown was. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
so yeah, no, totally. And the reason this one caught my eye is that the sellers had already gone through committee of adjustments or variance requests, and they had already gotten an approved severance from the town. The only issue is that if you buy it and you don't sever it, within 2 years, that
Yeah.
severance expires. So then you
Yeah.
have to go back and reapply. So that was what was interesting to me because it gave you optionality. But I wouldn't do anything with the severance had I bought it. I would have just, cleaned it up, rented it out, and just land banked it because if they allow severance here now, what's to say they're not going to allow it in 10 years? Obviously, it's not a for sure thing, but
Yeah.
common sense would mean that they should. But yeah, totally get it. So if if somebody is looking to do something like this, at what point do they typically engage you? Like, do they engage you when they start looking with an agent at properties? Do they engage, or do they do it like, let's say, one day once they've gone conditional on a property and it's like, hey, this is the property. Can you come by, take a look, do a consultation? Like, what does that process look like? I just want to know, even for myself. Let's say I had this thing tied up. How do I get you involved?
Yeah, so we're typically involved after like offers accepted. We don't have the bandwidth nor the business setup where we can do consultations and things. I mean, we can do consultations before purchase, but it's very high level, right?
Yeah,
So it's not like we're saying you're good to go on this one, you're going to be able to get this, right? So there's no guarantees.
yeah,
Uh, and so, we would love to be able to service people and kind of go through that process with them. I mean, that's something that we could do eventually is build a team more where we can help people who are in the acquisition phase and help them narrow down something that's going to work. But in the meantime, we're really trying to educate people as much as possible, like folks like yourself who are watching our videos, so that you have a good understanding, and then so you have a higher probability to find success on the property when you're working with your clients, right? But they typically contact us after offer is accepted. We go in, we measure the house, and sometimes they're still not sure what they want to do, and then they can hire us for an on-site consultation. We look through everything, then they can make a decision, right? But it's pretty much, after they've accepted their offer is sort of accepted. Um, and then we go in and we sort of guide them on the next steps and whether it's permits or things like that.
So do you take them from basically an initial consultation, best, highest and best use, and then going straight to design,
Yeah.
permit submission, and then right down to like, I guess at that point, do you provide trade services? Like, do you GC the projects yourself, or is it something that you hand off to you just kind of supervise?
Yeah, so we had project management services, but again, with how busy we are with just the permit work and also our own projects, so we've kind of paused that, and now we're just designing permits. So we get you to the permit approval, and then you would work with a contractor. So clients would have a contractor. We could refer some contractors as well, but we don't have any relationship with the contractors. It's more just, hey, they've done what work for our clients in the past. Please do your own due diligence. And then we're there as a coach, like during the construction process, so that if they have any questions, we're happy to, get on calls and sort of touch base on milestones and see where things are going. And that's part of our package.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And the reason I was asking if you do pre-purchase consultations, I think for a lot of people, personally, from what I've seen, you could make a very costly mistake buying the wrong property that may look like it's the right property. And this is why I think like not everybody's would have gone and watched your video for the 11 mistakes we've made. Like to me, it's basically it's it's catastrophic if you purchase a property where the basement height is like 6.5 feet or something really low, because how are you going to fix that? I mean, sure, you can fix it. Money can fix everything, but the whole thing goes out the window the second you're dealing with something like that, right? A lot of things, egress, okay, you're gonna have to deal with. But like ceiling height to me is always a big one. Layout separation. Like for example, at this house that we're looking at, where they did the addition, I was looking at it. The basement and the foundation they had poured wasn't tied to any of the drains.
Hmm.
So basically it was a basement, but there was not no reference for anything. Everything was in the original house basement. So, there would have been cost to tie all that stuff, and which is fine. Again, totally doable, but it's all these little things that I think most people just don't know unless they obviously have a contractor with them and somebody that understands what you're trying to do and how much it's going to cost you to do all of that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree. I agree. That would be awesome to be able to have their properties evaluated before purchase, right? Um,
What are some common mistakes you see with people post-purchase that people come with you? Like, I guess, what could people do better that you see commonly where people are like, okay, I bought this property, and you're like, oh man, like this is, you should have maybe this wasn't the right one, or maybe it was the right. Like, what are some of these red flags, or typically things that could be avoided?
yeah, I mean things like ceiling height, as you mentioned, that's a big one if you're doing the basement. But for the most part, that part's okay because all you need is 6 feet 5 inches. Parking is still kind of a big issue because a lot of people make wrong assumptions about parking. So, for example, if you look at that house in that picture there next door with the 4 cars, 3 cars, right?
Yeah,
Like a lot of people will look at that driveway and say, "Oh, I can put 6 cars there. I can put 8 cars there. It shouldn't be a problem, right? Not a problem." But the way how you describe as parking is different from the way the city shows it. The city requires it, so they have requirements in terms of obstructions, angles, how much distance you need to have the car from the setback, and things like that. And sometimes, even though everything looks good and no one's going to care how many cars you park there as long as you're not blocking the sidewalk, but it doesn't let us get the permits if the city specifically says that they need to have, let's say you have 3 units, you need to have three parking side by side, and you can't have any obstructions, and you have to have a 6 meter setback from the property line, et cetera, et cetera. It can become complicated, right? So I would say the biggest is kind of parking. Um, York region, I'm not so sure about. Toronto, they've relaxed it quite a bit. A lot of cities have relaxed it quite a bit with parking, but still, you can't go in, blind and say, hey, everything's going to be fine because you need to find out what parking requirements are. And then that's when you don't have that permission, you go to minor variance, and then you invite the neighbors to come and scrutinize your project, right?
yeah.
Sometimes the committees are at the end of the day, even though they want more housing, they're gonna listen to the whatever the neighbor complaints are. And then the other thing is trees. Like, that could be an issue as well. Like, if you're building a garden suite, especially trees are something that people, they kind of, oh, I didn't expect that was going to be an issue. And then especially in Toronto, where trees are very important, even on your property.
Yeah. Speaking of parking, I want to just, and again, you're not going to be able to answer this with any sort of it's going to be a tough one to answer, but let's just say this is the most common thing you see people doing it, and people think they're Einstein because they figured out a loophole, and it really isn't a loophole, it's just nobody enforces it. When it comes to parking, let's say you had 3 units here. So this is a 2-lane driveway, so that's fine. You can park cars here, here, and then somebody will come and say, "Oh, look at this walkway. I made a walkway, but they're using it as a parking pad."
Hmm.
But at least it allows 3 different people, so they're not blocking each other and all that stuff. In terms of optics, I don't know if it's the best optics, but usually that's what a lot of people will do. In your experience, using walkways as per building code as parking pads, how much risk are you running like for enforcement? Because some people are going to be like, well, you can't do that. You can't park on a walkway, or is it a non-issue?
Well, it really comes down to is that a legal parking spot or not, right? If let's say okay, so I'll use the example of Toronto. You put a garden suite in, all parking requirements are eliminated. Okay?
Yeah,
So what that means is that you're not required to even show any parking on the drawings, on the site plan. You're like, I don't have any parking. I have two bicycle parking in the back. That's it. Now, the
mm,
reality is that you as a homeowner or as a investor, you want to make this product, this house, desirable, right? And especially if you're in a suburban location, you're going to want to offer parking to people, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
And so even though the city does not require it, as a matter of fact, they want to encourage less vehicles because less vehicles means that there's less there's less asphalt, right? They want more permeable surface. Um, you're not required it. So what some people do is they will have their own little solutions to have, even though they're not legal parking spots, they have parking spaces that somebody can technically use and it's not required, right? So though they might use interlocking, um, they might use permeable pavers, those ones where grass can grow through.
yeah,
And so who's to say that's walkway or driveway, what's required? So the key thing is the question is it required, right? If it's not required, then you have some room for flexibility in terms of how you park. But if it is required, let's say you do 3 units and the city, which most cities still do require one parking space per unit minimum, then where are you going to legally put that third parking, right? So that's where you can't get away with things like, creating a walkway and somebody parking there. But if it's not needed, then you have more flexibility, what I'm trying to say.
makes sense. Now,
Makes
in
sense.
terms of so York region, Markham, for example, where I am, it's very I wouldn't call it I don't think they're encouraging like multi-generational living or income suites, at least not as far as I'm concerned. It's not something that's high priority for them.
Yeah.
If you were to kind of look at the GTA as a whole, do you have areas that you prefer that you would say are friendly with people who want to do this and municipalities that maybe are not? Like I know Toronto right now seems to be awfully friendly with this type of thing and they're encouraging it, if anything, right? Is that a fair statement? And are there other municipalities that you would say are similar to Toronto if Toronto is a friendly?
Yeah, for some reason, York region has always been a little bit behind it, like slower, right? Whether it's Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Markham. I know Markham especially, like they took forever to get even their second suites policy in place. It's been a province-wide since like 2011, and it's taken them years to kind of get that properly done. And now cities are moving to 3 and 4. Now they have no choice because of it's a provincial mandate now to allow 3 units and to allow garden suites. But the problem is that their planning staff probably is a little bit behind in terms of the policies, and it's probably going to be very slow. Um, Vaughan, on the other hand, I know they've recently made a lot of progress in the last couple of years
Yeah.
in getting things in place. But I would say pretty much like all cities are on board right now with this kind of stuff. Um, just my personal experience, a lot in Toronto, a lot in Hamilton, Kitchener, those places. we've done a lot in Durham as well. I don't personally have done too much work in Durham, but they're pretty much on board. So yeah, there's no real, because of the provincial mandate and because of most cities wanting to do this, I would say 75% of the cities are pretty much on board with this type of development.
Yeah, so for yeah, being in Markham, it just again, you don't want to be the first person that has to battle the city to get through all these permits, and then because it's time and it's time and money, right? That you're not gonna get back. Whereas you can go to a place like you said, Durham. I know in Durham, it's been they're encouraging it. I know Stouffville right now has a mayor that is very much pro-development. He's encouraging different things, right? And it depends on who's in power and who's doing what. Um, yeah, anything else from your side that you kind of wanna that you think maybe would be important for people to kind of consider when they're thinking about projects like this? Because like I said, from my end, I'm actively very interested right now, and that's why I thought this interview would make a lot of sense for me right now because I'm actively starting to look. Uh,
Mhm.
on the flip side, you do have a lot of investors that are just sitting and waiting because obviously the market is so slow, everybody just sits and waits. So for
Mhm.
me, it's perfect because lots of choice out there. Again, something like this doesn't come up often. I'm still kind of upset that I missed out on this one. But again, we'll see. It's sold
Yeah.
conditional. It may
Yeah, yeah.
fall through. I don't know, right? I'm being hopeful, but I doubt it. I think whoever bought it literally congratulations to them because it's a good one. Anything else people need to kind of consider when if they're going down this path like that's maybe not commonly known?
Well, I mean, just from a big picture perspective, there's a lot of flexibility that you have with single family properties on lots like this, right? Like maybe not even as big as this one, but even 50 by 100, 50 by 120. Uh, with the policy shifts, there's a lot of opportunities either to keep the existing structure and maximize it like this house here or tear it down and build something. But the land itself is not always going to be there because if you really look at it, they're not building any more homes with these types of lots. And even the homes with, the suburban development pattern that we've seen, in the past 30 years or so, where you have this new greenfield and they're building these subdivisions and these lots are, smaller. They're maybe like 30 by 80 or something, and then they build like a 2,000, 3,000 square foot home. Even that, they're not issuing that many permits. A, they're not issuing that many permits for it. B, the developers, it doesn't make financial sense. So even the developers themselves are getting into the smaller stuff like townhouses and stack towns and other apartment rental construction. But for smaller investors, like myself, a lot of my audience, perhaps a lot of your audience as well, there's an opportunity for them to acquire these. And, if I had to think of when the time would be, like now is probably the best time where you're able to get some optionality, right? Like, you know, if you're trying to find something in 2021 or 2022, that was kind of impossible, right? But, human psychology, no one wants to buy things when they're cheap. Everyone wants to buy when it's expensive. So, um, that's really all I have to say. And I try to tell people like, single family homes are very limited, especially the ones with generous size lots. I would say probably the next 5, 10 years is a golden, like from now to the next 5, 10 years. It's probably going to be a window of time that you can basically grab these at a reasonable cost. As long as you believe the land is going to be valuable and inflation is going to keep happening, I think it makes a lot of sense. So nothing very concrete or specific. That's kind of a general statement, but I'm happy to answer any questions that are more specific.
Let me ask you a question because this is the question I get every single day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the market right now? What's your take on the real estate market right now as we speak?
Yeah,
And
right
where do
now.
you think it's gonna go, like short term, long term? Just your
Like,
general gut feel.
oh, like in Toronto or
GTA, yeah, GTA specific, like Toronto, Markham,
yeah,
Richmond Hill. Not so much the Hamiltons. I don't know enough about it. I'm talking
yeah.
like strictly York Region, Toronto, mostly Durham, Peel.
Yeah, I think that because we've gone up so fast in such a short period of time, um, I think there's going to be some pain still,
Yeah.
probably next year or two, right? Like, because if you look at the overall data right now, condos definitely are suffering. some of that is probably going to spill over. Like eventually, when these condos really don't sell, I think some of that pain is probably going to spill over to single family homes, right? But there's no new construction that's happening right now. I mean, it's very little, historic low new construction. So what's going to happen when all the inventory gets absorbed in the next 2 years, right? And so I think it's very hard to time perfectly to say like, let me find something in 2 years. I would say now is the time to look and see if it makes sense, run the numbers, because by the time you finish the project, it's probably going to take 2 years,
Yeah, yeah.
and it might be a good time. But yeah, like it's hard to say for sure. If my gut feeling is that next 1 to 2 years is still going to be kind of tough. Um, but after that, I just looking at all the data, all the demand, and no new inventory that's going to come on board, and government spending money. Yeah, I think it's going to be good.
That's the key point here is, so I agree directionally, I agree exactly what you're saying. I mean, the next 24 months are very much touch and go. Like I have no idea. I know within the next 60 to 90 days, I can tell you with high certainty the market's going to be not great. I mean, I have listings like, I just sold one last week. I have three currently sitting. If you're not priced aggressively and unless the property is an absolute unicorn, you're likely going to sit and you're going to expire and then you're going to chase the market down and you're going to price reduce. I have a lot of clients that they're like, they waited, they didn't want to list in the spring because this spring market was probably the worst spring market we've ever had in 20, 25 years. Uh, but there's no guarantee that this fall market is going to be any better. And if there's any indication of the last 2 years, the fall market since the crash of 2022, it's been worse.
Mhm.
So we just don't know. So I agree with you. If something makes sense, and this is kind of why I actually lost out on this property. The property made all the sense. The math was mathing, as they say. But I was like, well, what if the prices come down a little more? But the problem is I can't find a property similar to this. And this is what I'm struggling with because even if I paid whatever I was to pay for it right now, and even if prices were to go down, it's okay because the numbers still worked.
Mhm.
If even if it went down another 10%, right? You don't want to be catching a falling knife, but that is the reality right now. And the other point you said, single family homes. I think that is where ultimately the value is going to be because it's again, you can't build them like, you can't just throw them up on a random corner like you can with a condo. And condo land and condo value, zoned condo land is basically of little to no value. A couple of years ago, you could rezone something for a condo, you get a big lift on the land right away. Developer scoops it up, great. Now that's irrelevant because of the new policies that have come out. It's not the same. So it's dynamic. I do agree with you. Single family homes, the entire market at large is probably going to suffer for the next year to 2 years, but really, who knows? So that's kind of where I'm at. So it's interesting to see that you're kind of feeling something similar on your end.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But uncertainty is always going to be with us, right? No matter what. Like even in 2 years, you think you see something and then something can change. Something gets announced. Because, even last year, late last year and early this year, January, I think the market was kind of okay, right? It was doing pretty well. And then, we have these tariff announcements. So I think uncertainty is always going to be with us, no matter what. And the question is like, what can you do during those uncertain times, right? And if the property makes sense, you can do highest and best use, knowing that long term, this stuff is not going to be available or at a price that it's going to be favorable, and you have the funds, why not take action if you're able to?